Hey y'all, thank you for joining me in on another video. This is a double milestone today. First of all, it's the 40th video that I've done since last year. It's not 52 like I wanted, video a week, but it's still an awesome milestone. And two, it's been a year. Today, December 26th, marks 1 year since I started these videos. I started the videos, going back to when everything first went down. I wanted to do something to help others, and to let others know that they're not alone, because abusers love to isolate their victim and make them think that they're all alone and that they're the only ones going through what they're going through. I wanted others to learn from the numerous mistakes I made, and hoping to help prevent others from making the same mistakes I made. I just didn't know how I was going to go about it. And then December 26th of 2020, which would have been my 33rd anniversary, I was grieving and feeling really down and depressed and kind of all up in my feels. And I decided, instead of sitting here moping around, feeling sorry for myself, I'm going to make something positive out of this. And I made the first video. Now, I'm not negating what I was feeling. It's been a grieving process. Grieving the marriage, grieving what I thought I had, grieving the loss. But I wanted something positive to come from this day instead of only focusing on it would have been X number anniversary. Y'all, I have had such a tough time making this video. This is like, I don't know what attempt at trying to make a video, and I keep getting interrupted. So please bear with me, because I'm going to keep pausing and starting up again. Evidently, what I have to say, Satan doesn't want said. But like I was saying earlier, so I wanted to make this day about something positive to focus on, instead of something, instead of only focusing on this would have been the X number anniversary or whatever, focusing on this is the anniversary of when I started the videos. And no, I don't have 1,000 followers. I'm grateful for the 36 I have. I don't have hundreds of views on each video, but I'm grateful for the views I have, because I'm not out to make money off of this or get notoriety. I'm doing it to help. If I can help just one person, help prevent one person from going through the turmoil I did, then these videos will have been worth it. And so I'm really grateful for those that have joined me on this journey. It's been a wild journey for sure. Okay. Hopefully no more interruptions. But this has been a wonderful journey. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. I've said that numerous times. Um, Healing is hard, but it's so worth it. And I look back at how far I've come in just the 12 months from the time I made my first video to now. And the progress I've made because of therapy. And therapy is hard work. It's not about just venting to a counselor or something, although that's part of it. Trust me, my counselor's heard me out vent a lot. In fact, I'm probably the cause of his hair getting even grayer than what it already is. Um, but um, in just the 1 year's time, when I first started these videos, I wasn't able to control my triggers. I was just to the point to where I would recognize a potential trigger and do what I could to avoid it. But that's as far as I had gotten. Now, I'm able to control the triggers and the flashbacks. Just like a week or two ago, it was 2 weeks ago. My daughter and I went to go see a movie, The West Side Story, the remake. And there was a pretty intense scene in there. I won't describe the scenes because I don't want do any spoilers for anybody that hasn't seen it yet that may want to see it. It's a good movie, by the way. Cussing, taking Lord's name in vain, I didn't like, but the rest of the movie was great. There was a really intense scene that was similar to something that I had endured. And in knowing the original movie, I was kind of prepared for it. So that helped me. But that particular scene, though it didn't trigger a past memory that I already remembered what happened that was similar to what I had gone through, it triggered a memory that I had totally forgotten about. Oh my goodness. Here's the victory though. I was able to control my reaction. I've heard it said by my therapist as well as another psychologist that I follow on Instagram, Dr. Caroline Leaf, that the first 90 seconds of your reaction is the trigger. After that, it's you. So after 90 seconds, you can control how long that reaction is. And at first when I first heard it from my therapist, I was offended. Because it's like saying, yeah, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. Well, I realize now, no, I don't. Because I can control it. But it takes time. Oh boy, does it take time. But I was able to control it. I was able to settle myself down, remind myself I'm in a safe place. I'm safe. I'm here in the now. I grounded myself. The movie finished. My daughter and I went back to my van. I took her home. And then I started getting I was able to control it enough to let her go inside. And then that's when it started trying to overtake me. And I'm like, no, I am safe. I can't do this now. I can't process it now. Because this was a brand new memory that, though I had thought about it on several occasions throughout the years, on a rare occasion, because it was a memory that happened when I was so young. I was 9 when it happened. Amazingly enough, didn't have anything to do with my ex or my father. Um, I had to process this. And I think it was just because my older self was seeing it now and realizing the ramifications of it, whereas my 9-year-old self didn't realize it. And but I was able to calm myself down, get myself grounded again, and in control to where I could take the drive home. Because my daughter lives an hour's drive from me. So I was able to take the drive home. Whole way home, I'm doing great. Driving on the interstate, and y'all, it's not fun. Not for me, at least. Um, and pick up my youngest, bring him to work, then came back home. Then I was able to process it and I let myself go. Y'all don't realize how much of a victory that is. Because there was a time that I could not have controlled anything, that I had to just let it run and run its course. And it would take at least 10 minutes, if not longer, depending on the memory. And I went from not being able to control it at all to at least recognizing where there could be a potential trigger and prepare for it, to be able to control a trigger and say, not now. I will deal with you in a little while. I was able to put a stop to it, do what I needed to do, get myself safely home, because, I wouldn't have been able to process it and everything while I'm driving on the interstate going 75 miles an hour. But, and then taking my son to work, and then getting it processed, and being able to process it, being able to control how it was processed. I mean, that in and of itself is amazing. And that in of itself, when I got to tell my therapist, I talked over the memory and everything and went over with him the process and everything, and then explained how I was able to control it. He's like, that is like a major victory, because there's going to be triggers and memories coming up, suppressed memories. That's going to happen for a while. My therapist warned me of that when I first started therapy. Within the first, it was like the second or third session we had, he warned me that I was basically stirring the pot, so to speak. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. And I'm proud of myself, and I'm patting myself on the back. But I'm doing it, I'm harping on this because I want y'all to realize that those that are going through the healing part of trauma, that you can get there. I am where I am through some intense work. And yeah, I've been healing a little faster than the average, but I'm also of the belief that a big part of why I'm healing faster is because I'm going through these videos. Because in talking about the trauma that I've dealt with and how I'm processing it, kind of desensitizes, the more you talk about something, the more desensitized you are with it eventually. Um, so these videos have been very therapeutic for me. I didn't start out with them wanting to be therapeutic for me. I wanted to help others. But it's dual fold. Can't talk. Dual fold, twofold. There you go, twofold. That I'm able to. It's therapeutic for me, as well as helping others. And it takes a lot of work. When you start going to therapy, you got to really be willing to work at it. Because when you go into therapy and you're going to heal from past traumas, even if it's one trauma that you're dealing with, no matter what it is, that you've got to be willing to work. Because if you're not going to work it, it's not going to help. You're not going to get better. It takes a lot of hard work. Um, I've never done more mental work than I've done in this past year and a half in therapy. First, I went to therapy in May, so June, July, August, October, November. So a little over a year and a half in therapy. I've done more work than I've ever done, mental work. Dealing with not only the multiple trauma that my ex did upon me, but in facing other trauma that I thought I had dealt with, but never did. Because y'all, I've been through the ringer. The latest memory, I'll try to be vague about it. But suffice it to say that I was molested at 9. And by a boy that I trusted. I was 9. The boy was 13 or 14 at the time. Then I was molested by a trusted person, a trusted man that was like an uncle to me, kind of like a second father figure type thing. And I was mentally abused by a lot of the guys I dated. Oh my goodness, I think maybe one day I'm going to do a video on just the guys I dated. Because I'm realizing now, I didn't realize it then, but I'm realizing now that I was abused by a lot of the guys I dated. And then I was raped. But before I was raped, there was a guy that I was semi-dating that attempted to rape me, that by the grace of God didn't. Then I was raped, and then I was abused by my now ex-husband for 30-some years. So I've been through the ringer. And I'm not saying this to tout myself and wear a badge of victimhood, because I'm nobody's victim. I am a victim of abuse and trauma, both sexual, physical, and emotional. But I'm not anyone's victim. I may be the victim of a rape, but the rapist I'm not his victim. I am the victim of what he did. I am not my ex-husband's victim. I am a victim of what he did. And the distinction, it may seem like a little thing, or it may seem like semantics, but it's not. Because I came to this mentality even while I was still going through all the crap I was going through with my ex-husband. That I'm nobody's victim. Because when you become somebody's victim, that's an enabling yourself to stay a victim. At least I feel that way. I don't know if there's any science to it or anything, but it's just that's how I have felt, that the minute I call myself my ex-husband's victim or the rapist's victim, I set myself up for failure. Like I said, I am a victim of the circumstances, not the person. Because I'm not going to give that person the power over me. Nah, dude. They may have had the power enough to victimize me and abuse me in some sort of way. But if I allow myself to be their victim, I'm continuing to let them have the power instead of taking that power back. Because when you start healing, y'all, this is a revelation that I'm coming up with now that's just coming to mind. When you're healing, it's hard to heal when you allow someone to still have power over you. Even if it's from a distance. Like, God says you are to forgive. First of all, me and my own flesh, I'm not going to forgive anybody that's hurt me. Because others may not believe this, but I can hold grudges. And for the longest time, I held a grudge against the individual that raped me. And I had to let go of that. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you forget. It means that you let go of that power that they have over you. Because when you forgive, you let it go and decide to let God handle the judgment. It's not saying you're forgetting what they did or even lessening what they did, because what was done to me was horrible on so many levels from every person that ever hurt me. However, if I hold on to that bitterness, that allows them to stay in my mind and to control my mind and to control my actions. Because if they're going to remain in my mind, for one thing, I'm not going to be healing. Not fully. Maybe on some small level, but I'm not going to be fully healing and become the person that I could be, that God intends me to be. Forgiveness doesn't mean you justify what they did. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you excuse what they did. It just means you take your hands off of it, say, I've released it. And you release the bitterness the hate and the anger. I can say in all honesty that I've actually prayed for my rapist, for the one that raped me. I pray that undoubtedly he's in prison for something, not for the rape, not for raping me. He was never caught for that. But for, he's undoubtedly in jail for something, if he's not dead. 'Cause he was pretty much my age. So, and let's face it, if you're in prison, you don't live long. Or he probably got shot with the life that he lived because he was a stalker. He stalked me. I figured out now, the police even figured that he had been stalking me for a couple of weeks just by the different things. He knew where to break in, to where I wouldn't hear him. He knew where there was a ladder in the garage. Our garage was detached from the house, and the ladder was way in the back, on the back wall of the garage. So he had to go snooping in there to even find it. So he was evidently stalking me for quite a while. And looking back, because they thought that he was stalking me like the 2 or 3 weeks between when I saw him first at the convenience store and when he raped me. But in thinking about what he said today, that he saw me at the convenience store, I'm convinced that he was looking at me and stalking me before that. Because the day he saw me, I was dressed up kind of nice because I was expecting a friend to come over. And I was walking to the convenience store to grab a drink and use the phone because my biological father didn't feel the need to have a telephone, mainly because I'm the one who got all the calls and he didn't. So he figured, why bother? Because he got tired of me getting all the calls. That was his mentality. But when I walked to the convenience store to grab a drink and use the payphone, the guy that would eventually rape me came up to me and talked to me like he knew me. He's like, well, how are you today? And I'm like, I'm well, thank you. I mean, yeah, there's a piece of dirt on here that was driving me nuts. Like, I'm fine, thank you. And he's like, you look mighty pretty today. I mean, he was talking in a manner that he was familiar with me, like if he knew me. And I had worked at a local fast food place down there, so where I'm from. And so I thought, okay, maybe he's one of the customers that were there and I just didn't recognize him because, this place where I worked was on a very busy intersection. And we'd have deal with hundreds of people in a day. So I figured it was just one of my regular customers I didn't recognize. And so I realized now that in the way he talked to me, very familiar, like as if he had known me for a while, he probably was stalking me before. So, and going by that and knowing how to stalk me and everything, it's a pretty safe assumption that he was a career criminal. And I have found myself praying for him that if he's not dead yet, that he turns from his sin and becomes born again. And that if he's in prison, which if he's alive, he likely is in prison, that a true born again person comes up to him and he gets saved in jail. I literally prayed that. I'm not saying that to tout myself and say, oh, look at me. No. Because without Christ in me, I couldn't do that. I would still be holding the bitterness because I held the bitterness for many, 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 many years. Um, and on my birthday, not this past year, but year before, back in 2020, as a birthday present to myself, I forgave my ex. And I let go of that bitterness. There's times that I still grab onto that anger, and I find myself grabbing onto that bitterness. But I'm able to let it go and say, no, I let it go. Does it mean I trust him? Heck no. I don't trust him farther than I can throw him. There's a reason I still have a protection order against him. And I'm contemplating this March when the protection order expires. I couldn't think of the word. I'm contemplating renewing it for a second time. Because I don't want to deal with him. Because he's on probation now, and he can't. While he's on probation, he can't contact me at all. But once the probation ends, he could, provided this other case, depending on what this other case goes. But and so I'm not just saying, oh, he's good and I'm gonna, I don't trust him. And I do my best to keep tabs on him. Just to know generalities, what he's up to, because I don't trust him. I don't think he's going to do anything to land himself back in jail because he's not totally insane. He's not one of these insane people that like being in jail, that would rather be in jail. He would rather be out. So, but you never know. So, on that aspect, that's not holding on to bitterness though. That's just being smart. But on the same token, if I was like driving down the street and I saw that he had gotten hit by a car, for instance, and I was able to render aid, I would pull my van over, render aid, call 911 or whoever, get him taken care of. Then I'd get in my van and go off. Go about my business. So I would take care of him because I don't wish him harm. Most days. There are days that I get angry with him. Something triggers me and I get angry at all the abuse and stuff and things I'm going through that are in direct correlation to the abuse. But in general, I don't wish harm on him. I genuinely hope that if he's not truly saved, that he eventually becomes saved, because I do want him in heaven. Like I said, doesn't mean I trust him. But I let that go and forgave him. Not for his benefit. It was obedience to God. But it was to help me. And that's why God wants us to forgive. Is because, for one, there ain't nothing anybody could do to us that we're not capable of doing. Because all of us are on an even keel. All of us are sinners. All of us are terrible in some way, shape, or form. Um, it keeps us humble, and it keeps us from having, you know, sorry y'all, I know you saw that bug crawling on the wall. I had to go kill it. Um, but it keeps you humble, and it keeps you from harboring um, bitterness, because bitterness, it doesn't heal. It only makes things worse. Because when I was holding on to bitterness, like with um, the individual that raped me, I wasn't healing. It's when I let go of that bitterness. I hadn't gotten to the point of forgiveness, total forgiveness. I didn't have total forgiveness until about maybe 5 years ago. And I was raped 34 years ago. And so um, it wasn't until like 5 years ago when I actually forgave him. But when I started going through letting go of the bitterness, that's when I started healing. And so I learned from that and decided to, as a birthday present to myself, forgive my ex. Not for his benefit. My opinion, he doesn't deserve any forgiveness. On that note, neither do I when it comes to God. But God could forgive me. But I did it mainly for myself, as a birthday present to myself, because I learned when it took so long to just forgive the individual that raped me, and how I still harbored resentment and bitterness. Even when I was letting go of the bitterness, I still had some of that with me. I didn't want to hold on to that with my ex, because I didn't want my ex to have that kind of power. I wanted to be able to move on and move ahead and just move away from it. And I honestly believe it's helped me heal. And I think in being able to forgive, it's enabled me to heal quicker. Yeah, there are days that I go through loneliness or things of that sort and say, if he didn't do this, I wouldn't be lonely. You know, but I'm dealing with the loneliness. And quite frankly, the loneliness is kind of a comfort, because there was the last 2 years of our marriage, I was lonely and still married. That hurt way worse than being lonely and single. I'd rather deal with being lonely as a single person than ever dealing with being lonely and being married. And so there's times I deal with loneliness and get mad at him, or I'm doing things that he had normally done and thinking, oh, if he was here, he would be doing it, and on and on. But because I forgave him, I'm able to let it go quicker and say, no, I'm letting it go. And then I turn it around and say, no, I don't need him. Look, I'm doing it. I'm struggling, but I'm doing it. And so with everything that I get mad at, that he should be doing, it's a testament to me because now I'm doing it. And that's why part of why y'all see me have this cup on here each time I do these videos. It's a coffee mug that my daughter gave me for my birthday last year. And it was perfect because for so long he had me convinced I couldn't do anything. Y'all, I was the only income for the last 3 years of our marriage. I was paying all the bills. I was making the income to pay all the bills. I was doing all the groceries. I was doing all the cooking. I handled everything. He handled nothing. The only thing he did was sit on his butt and drink his life away and abuse me. And and so he had me convinced that without him I was nothing, because if I did make a mistake that he happened to catch, like on the rare occasion that I would be driving with him in the vehicle, because I hated doing that because he would pick apart every little thing I did, and he happened to see a car coming and I didn't, it said stop, and I would stop, and then the car would come. See, if I wasn't here, you'd have ran right into him. And of course that only fed into my insecurity. And little things like that convinced me that I needed him for something. Y'all, I've been single for almost 2 years now. On March 10th of 2022, I'll be single for 2 years, because that's when everything went down. And look how far I've come. And again, that's not touting me. That's God. That's God saying, that's God strengthening me. And God reminding me of how strong I've already been. And I look back at how I was when everything first went down. Because, like I've mentioned, by the time everything went down and I had him removed, I had already, months and months before that, had come to the conclusion that, like 7 months before that, had come to the conclusion that it was a matter of when we were going to part, not if. It was back in August of 2019, like the last week of August of 2019. And I had come after an incident that went down then. I can't describe it too much because it is part of a case that he's dealing with now that's still open. But suffice it to say, an incident that happened in late August of 2019, that's when I became convinced beyond a doubt that it was a matter of when we were going to get a divorce, not if. Before that, I was starting to think, there's no more hope because of everything that was going on. And I had already started telling people about what was going on because he was bad-mouthing me to everybody under the sun. So I wanted to get my story out in case something happened where, something happened to him and he did what he said he was going to do and make me look like the bad guy. I had started come to the realization that things were not going to remain, that we weren't going to last another year. It was a matter of when, not if. And I was starting to come to that realization. But then in August 29, I realized it was. And I think God had me come to that realization then, because I started having to get really strong. Start thinking, planning ahead, getting all my ducks in a row. I liquidated a majority of my retirement fund, my 401k, to prepare, because I didn't know if I was going to have to take a couple of weeks off of work, knowing that he was capable of almost anything. So I didn't know if I was going to have to take a couple of weeks off of work just to settle everything. So I started preparing, getting all the bills caught up, working hard to pay all the bills, tightening our belt, the budget as tight as I possibly could, cutting corners on the grocery bill as much as I could, and cutting corners in everywhere I could to get all the bills paid off, zeroed out. And God started showing me that actually I can handle things. And now look at me. I'm independent to boot. I'm supporting me and my youngest. I mean, my youngest helps. He's 20 now, so he helps out. But for 3 years, I was the sole income. And even now, I'm the majority income. And I handle things like a boss. Like, I'm patting my own self on the back. But I'm doing it not because of me. I'm trying to help others. You guys that are going through this, realize that you're stronger than you think you are. Because I'm way stronger than I thought I was back then. When the day everything went down, I was wondering, how am I going to do this? I didn't know what I was going to do next. After I went on autopilot, and after cops came and they left with him and everything and came home, I went in autopilot. I cleaned the house. Don't know why, because the cops had already seen the place was in disarray. It was embarrassing. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this house is a mess. I gotta clean it. And I went in a cleaning mode. You do funny things. And I went into autopilot. I cleaned the apartment, the living room and the kitchen, got everything straightened out. Then I went to the courthouse, filed a protection order, came home. My kids came over and helped me out. My daughter was here for me and talked to me for a while. And then my oldest son talked to me. I called him when I knew he was awake, because he worked overnight. So I wasn't going to call him because when everything went down, it was around the time he normally goes to sleep. So I wasn't going to call him and upset him and prevent him from going to sleep when I knew he had to work that night. So I just waited until I waited, and then I didn't know my sister-in-law had already, because everything went down, my sister-in-law was wondering what's going on with my ex, and so she texted my oldest and's like, "Your dad is nuts. What's going on?" So then he texted my youngest and's like, "What's going on with dad?" And well, so then I told him. So he called into work that night and stayed with me. And stayed with me for a little while. And so then that's when I totally lost it. And because I was an autopilot, and then once everything got done that I could do, that's when I lost it. It's like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to handle this. I'd already told my boss that I was going to take off the next day because I had stuff that needed to be done. And I'm like, how am I going to handle this? Because I hadn't been alone. I hadn't ever lived on my own until I got, because I married directly out of my parents' place. My mom and my stepdad, I was living with them. And I went from living with my mom and my dad, my stepdad, to being married. So I'd never lived on my own. The thought of being alone was foreign to me. And now I'm doing it. And now look, a year later, doors are opening left and right where I'm helping others through what I went through, helping them learn from my mistakes. A year later, I'm making my 40th video. So I also want to impress that it's never too late. I was married 32 years, almost 33 years. Well, going on 33 years when I had him removed. So it's also, don't think it's too late. If you've been in a relationship for 10, 15, 20 years and figure, well, I've been in it this long, I might as well just stay. No. You deserve to not be in a toxic relationship. You deserve civility. You deserve peace and to be treated like a human being, or to not have anything to do with that person. Doesn't matter if you've been with that person for 1 year or 30, 40 years. You've got the courage to leave, leave. Time is irrelevant. And the worst thing you can do is say, oh man, I should have left sooner. I go through that. Because I should have left at best back in 07. When I called police on him the first time, I should have stayed gone. But I can't change that. I'm going by now. I've been away from him going on 2 years. It's been a year and 9.5 months and counting. So you guys have a good week. This is the last video of 2022. Of 2021. Hopefully 2022 is better. Stay blessed and have a good week. Bye.